Okay, here's the thing. And this is kind of a depressing analysis of canon, so it might stay in the drafts for a while. But Steve should have died instead of Eddie. And like, obviously my preference would be for them to both be alive and happy and living in Indianapolis in their lovely apartment in the 90s. But what should have happened was Steve dying and kind of leaving Eddie to take up his mantle, kind of in a Boromir dying and leaving both Aragorn and Faramir to take over his place. Because just imagine the way that the tension between Steve and Eddie over their sort of jealousy for each other about the way that the teens respond to them, morphing into, like, on Steve's deathbed, him entrusting Eddie with that task of taking care of the little ones, and that sort of having become a respect for each other over the course of the season, as we saw, but then kind of it becoming this sort of promise. And imagine how much more powerful it would have been for Eddie's sort of, fearfulness and cowardice that he perceived in himself being more like Aragorn's fear of taking up the throne and kind of taking his proper place in things, and that becoming again Eddie's sort of like, okay, like what would Eddie's like putting on Boromir's like armor guards have been? Like, can you imagine that if he'd taken something of Steve's and kind of carried it forward with him? And I think that that would have had a huge impact on the audience as well, losing Steve right before the last season. Obviously, again, devastating, but it would have meant really high stakes as we went into the last season, and we would have felt the shadow of his loss very heavily, and it would have really made that fight personal. And yeah, I don't know, just the show has such a strange, odd relationship with the whole sort of kill your darlings approach, where they really don't get rid of people that they should, and they do get rid of people who really should have stuck around. It's a really odd approach, and it makes me curious how swayed they are by audience favor towards people, because I think it's why Hopper came back and why, Steve is still around. And I constantly think about how season 4 would have been different if they'd been on set and kind of already gauging reactions to a character like Eddie. But yeah, I've mostly been imagining more positive spins on season 4 that include Eddie. And I guess today I was just sort of like, what if you continued to hurt your own feelings, like just a little bit more?